Hi there, welcome to the channel and welcome back again if you're a return viewer. You're watching the Christchurch Review of Books and I'm your host, Kerry. Now today, the big one, the book that has been haunting me for about 30 odd years, book I had been putting off reading for the last 2 years, and it is this, Hyperion, and in this form of the Hyperion Omnibus, which contains the original Hyperion itself and its sequel, The Fall of Hyperion. Now, ever since I started on the internet about 5 years ago, early 90s, hard to believe it was so long ago now. Used to have a little BBS account with a local BBS which gave you 90 minutes of internet per day. It was strictly rationed, and the main attraction for me there was Usenet groups. I think the closest thing to them now today is Reddit. It's just masses of forums about every subject you could possibly think of. People are out there sharing messages, and these messages were being spread around the world by the very young internet as it was in those days. And it was great. It was a reason to be online, and unfortunately it has died off in the past 30 years, but other things have replaced it. Web forums, and of course things like I just mentioned, Reddit. Now among these news groups and early forums, one book stood out for those who were science fiction lovers. Now, I think I've said on this channel before, science fiction was my first reading love. It got me into reading, kept me interested, and I devoured it aggressively as a younger person, and I'm still a fan today. I don't read as much of it today. My tastes have broadened out a little bit more in the recent times, but science fiction is always special for me. And the book that everyone was talking about in the early 90s was Hyperion. In fact, in this version, this cover, this is the hardcover and initial paperback cover. This kind of haunted me every time I'd pick up a science fiction related magazine book or something that had reviews in it. This book would be popping up, and I kind of never really understood what the great appeal was and what the book was really about. There was lots of mention of this figure, the Shrike, you can see on the cover, a prickly, spiky, beastie thing. And a lot of story about this, a lot of talk about the story structure of Hyperion, and no one ever really discussed what it was all about. It was just supposedly great and special at the time. Now, in the early 90s, another book came along to rival Hyperion in the fan favourite hype stakes, and that was A Fire Upon the Deep, by Werner Vinge. I actually read that one at the time, and I really liked that one too. But over the years, Hyperion has come back into fashion, it seems, and people are talking about it over and over again. I believe there are dedicated forums to just Hyperion. And of course, Hyperion didn't stay just the one book. There was The Fall of Hyperion, included in this version, and there were two further books, Endymion books, Endymion and The Rise of Endymion. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. And overall, there's 4 books which make up what's called the Hyperion Cantos, named after an epic poem in the actual books themselves. People say the last 2 books are less than essential, though apparently a little weaker, and can be left out. I picked them up in ebook form just in case I want to be completist. I have no plans of reading them right away, which may give you a clue to how I felt about at least the second book in the series. So anyway, Hyperion, what's it all about? It's such hype. I bought the Omnibus a couple of years ago and finally got around to reading it starting about late or mid-December last year. We're now in February. I finished it a couple of weeks ago. Had a little break between the 2 books to read another one, which you've already seen the review of, extremely online. Yeah, so Hyperion, the first book is uniquely structured maybe for a modern book, but it has influenced other books that have followed it, which I only kind of recognised after reading Hyperion. It has the kind of classic traveller's tale structure. It's been used in fiction for hundreds of years, the most classic example being the Canterbury Tales, I believe. So basically, a group of travellers get together, and during their travels, to pass the time of day, basically they tell each other their stories and how they came to be where they are now. And basically, as a group, they come to learn about each other and what makes them in common and what makes them different, and how they are linked by the object of their travel. And the object of the travel in this case is the planet Hyperion. Each of the travellers, which are known as the pilgrims in the book, have some connection with the planet Hyperion. It's either caused some great rupture in their lives, a mystery to them that they have to solve, or some item or something they have to regain. They are all linked to Hyperion. Some of them don't even know really why. And these travellers are going to Hyperion, and Hyperion is, why is it so special? Basically, a bunch of artificial intelligences in this future world, have said that Hyperion is a variable which can't be trusted. It is somehow special, and you can't predict the future without accounting the strangeness of Hyperion. Now, in this future universe, the humans are basically represented by the Hegemony, a massive democratic empire, if such a thing can exist, which spans many star systems and is connected by actual starships and these Farcaster portals, kind of instantaneous travel. I mean, if you've seen the show Stargate or similar things, you know what it is. You walk through a portal and appear suddenly on another planet. Now, the key worlds in the hegemony are called the web, and they're all the planets that are connected by these portals, and they're like lying planets which are connected by slower forms of travel like starships, and there's much talk of time debts and whatever, so you can get to somewhere instantaneously. Some planets, other planets take you years of travel time, and this leads to all sorts of odd time experiences for the citizens of the hegemony. And the hegemony's major rival seems to be the ousters. And the ousters, early in the book, you lead to believe that the ousters are some sort of bug-eyed alien classic foe of mankind, but I probably don't think it's a massive spoiler that later on we learn that the ousters are actually humans who split off from mankind a couple of hundred years ago and have become adapted to space travel and life in space. For whatever reason, the ousters and the hegemony have become antagonists. They have fought wars and conflicts, and it appears that the ousters want to capture Hyperion and use it as some type of strategic position for whatever. Now, Hyperion is special not just because the artificial intelligences say so, because it has these things named the time tombs on Hyperion, these structures in a certain place near the mountains and on the planet where strange fields, temporal fields, protect these buildings, and it's thought that these fields are about to open and release what may be hidden in these time tombs, or spoilers, maybe in the time tombs in the distant future. Okay, and closely linked to the time tombs and the associated ruins and structures is the Shrike. Now, this is the big bogeyman of the book, and he featured on that cover that I showed you earlier, the original cover. The Shrike is like the driving force of the narrative, really, when things get going. Shrike is a kind of biomechanical, tall, four-armed, spiky creature with glowing red eyes, sharp teeth, spikes and blades all over himself, and anyone who encounters him comes off the worse for wear. Most of them come off dead. And as such, the Shrike has inspired cults and religions, not just on Hyperion, but around the hegemony. There is a Shrike religion, which is sort of unofficial, but they worship the Shrike as some type of great destroyer and prophet of doom. And people on Hyperion themselves fear the Shrike. The Shrike seems to pop up anywhere he pleases and kills people for apparently fun. And the Shrike's appearances are getting further and further from the time tombs. He seems to be getting a wider range of operations, and this has everyone worried. And so it comes to pass that the ousters are about to attack Hyperion at the same time as our brave plucky pilgrims are going to reach the planet, and somehow it's all linked. The Shrike, the pilgrims, the ousters, and everything else basically. So anyway, the structure of the book, like I said, is the Traveller's Tales, and this is probably the most interesting part of the book, really. One by one, I think 7 travellers, 7 pilgrims tell their tales, and they're like their own little novels, little little stories, well, separate genres almost. Like the first story, which may actually be the best story still, is The Priest's Tale. It tells the story of a Catholic priest in a time in the future when the Catholic religion is dying, and he's sent to Hyperion basically as a punishment for faking scientific results, and encounters a tribe of basically de-evolutioned humans who have reverted back to some type of semi-primitive state, and he uncovers the secret behind what's going on with them. And on the way he encounters our friend the Shrike, and now so many years later he is returning to the planet of Hyperion. And other stories include that of a kind of failed poet whose great work is finishing the Hyperion Cantos, and he's struggled through times of great struggle and stress. He's been alive for years, more longer than most people, and he just wants to finish his poem, and Hyperion has become intrinsically linked with his poem and his life's work. There's another man whose daughter was an archaeologist who studied the time tombs and the associated structures, and one day she went into a tomb, something happened with the time fields, and she started aging backwards, or has Merlin's disease, if they called it. No one knows how to cure it. She's studied by all science across the Hegemony. No one can fix it, and she's basically aging rapidly backwards, and her father basically has to risk everything, get her back to Hyperion to see if he can fix it before she basically ages so far backwards that she hasn't been born. And the other story that stood out for me was that of the detective, a hard-boiled female detective from a tough planet, Braun Lamia, I believe her name is. She's kind of uncovering all sorts of things when a man comes to her for help to hire her, and he turns out to be no mere man. He is actually an embodied artificial intelligence who is given the personality of the poet John Keats to play with, and this of course all ties into the main narrative somehow. And this detective story in parts is kind of like a pastiche of cyberpunk books. The Planet Gion is like cyberpunk criminals and data cowboys or whatever. There's a special name for them in the book which I forget. And it reads like a little pastiche of the stories that at the time that Hyperion was written were also hot, the cyberpunk, original cyberpunk books, and it kind of makes fun of them a little bit, but introduces us closer to the artificial intelligence, which will become important later on. Now, there are other stories and other people that are more mysterious. There's a Cassad, a military hero who's plagued by visions of a beautiful woman every time he's in a battle or simulated battle. He yearns to find out who she is and what she's about, and this draws him to Hyperion, where he once crashed after battle and found this woman was actually real, not just a hallucination. Okay, so these stories go on, take up most of the book, and in the meantime there's like a linking narrative about the travels of the pilgrims across Hyperion. They take various forms of transport, need the help of various people and androids, and excuse me, eventually they get to the Time Tombs area, the mountain area. They have to go across a sea of grass and a huge wheeled sailing ship type thing, travel on a massive cable car over the mountains. Finally they walk their way up to the Time Tombs and the structures and where the Shrike is allegedly hanging out, and then the book basically ends. Nothing resolved, no mysteries solved, and the reader's saying, what the hell, what's going on? Okay, so fortunately I had the omnibus edition, so I didn't have to wait long to find out what happened next, and after about a week's break, as I said before, started into The Fall of Hyperion. Now, The Fall of Hyperion is a very different beast than the original book. It doesn't have the Traveller's Tale structure. It's more ordinary, basically. Initially, at least, it's kind of alternating chapters between the political and military goings-on in the Hegemony as they face total war, and the further adventures of the Hyperion pilgrims. Now, the linking element between these two things is a gentleman called Mr. Severin, M. Severin as they call him, and he's another one of these embodied AIs. He's very closely linked to the John Keats personality. It was featured in an important role in the original Hyperion, and somehow when he's awake he's a close confidant of the head of the Hegemony, helps her see things as clearly basically, and when he's asleep he dreams the adventures of the remaining pilgrims on Hyperion. And eventually he's drawn into other parts of the story, but that's pretty much the structure that remains. And it's no great spoiler to say that the Hegemony basically gets caught with its pants down over Hyperion. It's trying to protect Hyperion from the ousters at all costs, and suddenly spaceships appear all over the rest of the Hegemony. The web planets are under threat from a massive attack from what appears to be ouster forces. Political ruptions and social ruptions erupt across the Hegemony, and can mankind survive this, or is everyone doomed? Meanwhile, the Hyperion pilgrims are facing their own struggles. Some of them don't get out alive. I don't think it's a spoiler to tell you. Heroes from the first book all kind of like face up to their great fears and mysteries. But then the book kind of goes awry. There's a lot of introduction of, as the war rages, there's an introduction of a lot of the artificial intelligence themselves, and they kind of take over the plot for a while, and really, I didn't really care much about them. I didn't care that these great godlike creatures of data or what have you, who could span time and space, were basically, I hope this isn't a massive spoiler for you, are behind everything in the first book and the second book. Basically the AIs created godlike entities, and they messed around with everyone, and the whole quest of the pilgrims was some type of mission to basically placate these AIs' thoughts about Hyperion, and we discover the secrets behind the Shrike, the Time Tombs, and the various pilgrims' mysteries, and I found it was kind of profoundly disappointing. I didn't want really the mysteries about it to be all involved with the stupid AI conflict, which really didn't interest me all that much. And the book kind of peters out after that. Well, there are big conclusion and big twists, which I won't give away as spoilers, but I think it basically can be summed up in who is the real enemy of mankind in this situation. Is it the ousters, or is it somebody else? I've probably given a massive clue already in this story. I found the second book to be quite disappointing compared to the first. It doesn't really reach the highs. It is a good science fiction book. It has some good bits. There's some good sections. There's also a lot of really pretentious twaddle. There's a lot of theology and poetry and philosophy kind of woven together. And it serves a purpose, I guess, but I didn't really think it was worth it. It was kind of, like I said, pretentious, trying to make more depth to something that didn't really have all that much depth. Not saying it's a bad book, I just didn't enjoy as much as the first, and based on the Fall of Hyperion, I don't think I'll be continuing on with the next two at any time soon. So that's kind of summed up my thoughts. Original Hyperion, good. If you're a science fiction fan, if you're interested in speculative fiction and that type of thing, read Hyperion, the original one. If you're interested in the story and you just want to know how it works out, read the second one, The Fall of Hyperion, but don't expect the heights of the first book. Disappointed in the second book, really. That's my personal feeling. You may have a different one. I know there are dedicated fans to the entire Hyperion. Cantos will probably be shouting at me at this point, but excuse me. That's my feelings really on Hyperion and the Hyperion Omnibus. Probably neat to get it in this kind of collected edition rather than buying 2 or 3 books or whatever. This is published by Galland's in the early 2000s and is still in print. They did advertise a second volume with the next 2 books, but I can't seem to find it anywhere. It only seems to be published in a small American publisher in about 20 years ago. So I've got the ebooks anyway, so there we go. Hyperion Omnibus, first book good, second book not so good. If you're interested in this thing at all, read it. It is being talked about for 30 odd years for a reason, the first book. It's not faultless, but it's really good. And those people on Reddit who go on about Peter Watt's blind site these days, they should read Hyperion instead, really. Okay, so that's me. blabbering on for another day. It is a day in late February 2024. I've been working today on the phones for a certain major airline, struggling to do, excuse me, tasks which I was supposed to have been trained in, but when reality hits, all your training pretty much goes out the window and you need somebody to help you, basically. And my little team all feel the same way. We've been in training together for weeks, and yeah, things got real. Things got real last week, and things got even more real this week. I'm sure we'll get there. There are some very capable people on my team, and yeah. So that's my life really at the moment, working on the phones pretty much 8 to 9 hours a day. Not getting a lot of time for anything else, not getting a lot of reading in. I'm still supposed to move sometime. There's moves underway to find a new place again. So video frequency might get a little wacky soon. Okay, that's enough for me. It is 8:10 on Tuesday night, the 20th of February. This is me signing off once more. Goodbye.